Should you give up on your relationship? This is a complicated question with at least a few answers to consider. One of which is, are you married or not? You know, if you're not married, it's a lot easier to let go. If you are married, consider the fact that you took a vow till death do us part, for better or for worse. There's a strong argument that, you know, if your partner broke their vows, then, you know, the covenant of marriage is broken. But the question is, why did they break their vows? Was it something to do with them? Was it something to do with you? Was it kind of 60-40? And if so, in which direction? And my general advice is, if and when you can say you've given it your all, whether they deserved it or not, that you've given it your all, then I would argue that it's not the best idea to end the relationship, only because it's likely that you're going to repeat the same patterns that led to the failure of this particular relationship. One common example that I like to give people is, if you break up and you always find yourself with the same person at every, you know, end of a relationship, i.e. they're manipulative, they're abusive, they're something, then there's something about either how you're picking them or what you're unconsciously rewarding and punishing in their behavior. Now, of course, that's a nuanced answer, right? Like the fault of the abuser is always, the fault of the abuse is always the abuser. But, you know, I can tell you, in my past, I have met women that, you know, will say things like, "You're not a man if you don't hit me." I can tell you that I've heard plenty of those stories in my career. And so, you know, that I would argue is the extreme exception, but I'm saying this is a very complicated, nuanced answer. You know, in my practice, I've had clients that swore their male partners were narcissistic. And in some cases, yeah, they were. I mean, it's a very, very small fraction of the population, but in other instances, they were not. What happened was they didn't know how to win in the game of relationship with their partner. And so they shut down, they withdrew, they would drink, they would act selfishly, they would kind of bite their tongue, but then it would like explode and they would lash out on their partner. And so selfish behavior mixed with outbursts seems really narcissistic and selfish, but the truth is, this is just, they were cries for help. And so our culture has done a really bad job of discerning what a narcissist is, which has become a buzzword, a very dangerous one. It really is a small population. And, you know, bad behavior because they're acting out and they don't know how to win. And I would argue that unless you understand how to meet your partner's needs at that level, then you haven't given it your all. So again, going back to the point of the conversation is, if you haven't given it your all, regardless of how much you feel they deserve it, with nuance, but regardless of how much they feel they deserve it, then you're likely going to repeat the same bad mistakes or bad habits into the next relationship. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. I can tell you in my own career, I'm always learning. And one thing that I never really took all that seriously, but I've begun to take extremely seriously now, is the idea of attachment styles. And so, I mean, if you don't know anything about it, like maybe I make a course on it, but there are definitely other more qualified people that if you just went into TikTok, Google, YouTube, just typed in dismissive avoidant or anxious avoidant attachment styles, that's a rabbit hole you can go down. So, you know, maybe that's who you found yourself in a relationship with. And again, maybe you're not married, but if you are, for better or for worse, there's an argument that you took a vow to be with them, provided that you understand how to win the game of relationship or how to win the game of marriage between your idiosyncrasies. The problem is not many people know what their own idiosyncrasies are. Not many people know that they're either bipolar or ADD or, you know, have fears with being emotionally vulnerable because of how they were raised. It's a complicated mess, relationships, and I mean, I love doing what I do, but this is the free advice that I give. So if you're interested, if you have questions, if there's anything you want to know, please, by all means, message me, and I would be happy to help you in any way I can. But should you give up on your relationship? It's a very nuanced answer, but the general rule is give it your all for at least 90 days. Figure out what that means. That's very important. But give it your all for 90 days, and then if you still feel like it's not going anywhere, then yeah, at least you can rest assured that you gave it your all. Your conscience is clear, and you're less likely to bring that into your next relationship. So that's my advice.